Hi friends, Jonathan here. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. If you're a returning customer, I guess that's not really the phrase I want to use, but if you're returning, I want to welcome you as well. I appreciate you coming back. Um, and like my name's Jonathan, like I said, and these videos are drawing exercises, they're projects, and they're kind of designed to get you in the habit of being really playful with your drawing and just letting yourself be creative and not worrying about making these like perfect pieces of art. And so that's kind of the focus. And we start every session with a worry release exercise. And so what that means is you're going to take a piece of paper or something else to write on. I'm going to use these sticky notes. And what I want you to do is I want you to take a moment, take a breath, and think about the last couple days or today and what's something that's been worrying you, what's something that's been on your mind. All right? And once you have it, go ahead and write it down. And then once you have it written down, you can kind of decide what you want to do with it. Again, the whole point of this exercise is sort of kind of trying to give us some control over our anxiety or our worries, because if we just keep it bottled up, it doesn't have anywhere to go. It's just that pressure is going to affect us in a negative way. But by taking our worries and putting it out into the world, we can then kind of decide what we want to do with it, how we want to think about it, what do we physically want to do with it. And it's just a nice like release. Sharing is also a good way. If you want to share your worry with somebody else, you can. I can go ahead and share mine. I'll just do it real quick, but I wrote down, oops, I actually, after I already folded it, I wrote down work. I have too much. Like I think I've said in previous videos, sometimes when you work as an artist, sometimes you don't have any work and sometimes you have a lot. Sometimes you have too much, or sometimes things all kind of come together at once, and that's kind of what's happening for me. But feel free to share it if you want, and if you don't, that's okay. But once you have, you get to decide what you do with it, what you want to do with it now. And I'm going to put it in this worry envelope, and I'm going to look at these when I'm all done with these videos, and just kind of see what, it's almost like a weird worry journal in a way, where it just helps me think about what the things that have been on my mind lately and sort of reflect on that. So I'm going to set those aside, and we'll go ahead and start on our project today. Our project is going to be it's a lot to fit in, so I'm trying to be slow because I know I tend to talk really fast, but I also want to try to keep it all in, so I'm also going to try not to repeat myself. The supplies you're going to need, well, I guess I'll tell you what we're going to do first, is we're going to brainstorm a project, all right? And the whole point of this, do you guys know what brainstorming is? Have you done brainstorming before in class? Yeah? Yeah. Well, if you haven't, um, I'll talk about it a little bit. Brainstorming is basically this idea of like coming up with as many ideas as you can. And so when you decide to do the thing you're going to do, you have all these options to pick from. And I don't like to think of it as good ideas or bad ideas. I just like to think of them as ideas, and that we're just going to write them down. And really, what we're hoping to do is kind of just come up with a project in our head and do kind of some of this brainstorming work for it. You might not do this project in the future. It is going to be connected to what we're going to do next, but the real point of it is to just kind of remind you that things take time, good things take time, and that it's a process. When I was younger, I used to think that if someone was going to make a graphic novel, they would just sit down and make it, and then it happened. But as I've made graphic novels and comics myself, I realized that it's a process. It takes time, and there's lots of steps, so that by the time you get to the finished part of drawing, you've actually done all this work. And then so it makes it easier, which is kind of comforting in a way. So I have this, you might be like, Jonathan, what's this weird folder doing here? And so I'm not going to take you through it step by step, but I just want to show you these different drafts that I have. So this is the first draft. where you'll see it's just loose paper that I haven't even cut. I've just torn in half. All right. And it's me just writing down everything that's going to happen. What's going to happen, what gets said. You can even see there's some sound effects and stuff. And so this is my first draft. And again, the whole point of it is just to get the ideas in my head out into the world. They don't have to be perfect. All right. So you can see that there's crossing things out, and I use a pen because if I try to type on a computer for a first draft, I type, and if it's not perfect, I delete it. I type, it's not perfect, I delete it, and I never get anywhere. But if I write by hand, there's something about the way I think and the way I work that helps me get ideas out. And then by using a pen, I don't worry about erasing or anything. I just focus on getting them out. And then so I take this and I revise it. And you'll see that this is kind of the same thing. You probably can't actually read this through the video, but now I'm typing everything out. And it's easier for me to type when I had a first draft to build off of. And so I'll type out everything so it's a little bit easier to read. It's cleaner, it's a little more organized. But then I'll take, this is sort of the writing part, and then I'll try to translate it into the drawing with these sketches, these thumbnails, where I'm trying to figure out where things go on the page, what's happening in the panels, all right? And sometimes what I'll do is, well, actually I will do it. After I've done this sort of first draft, you guessed it, just like with the writing, I'm going to do a second draft too. And so that's where my notebook comes into play, is I'll do sort of a tighter, more refined thumbnails here. All right. And so then by the time I go to draw, you'll see I know exactly what's going to be happening in every panel. I know what the composition is, like where everything is in the image. I know where all that is. I know where the word balloons are. I know what's going to be said, so that when I go to actually draw it, there's not actually a lot of thinking involved. It's just actually the work of drawing. And so you'll see it ends up looking, this isn't the actual finished. This is sort of, since the book hasn't come out yet, this was just where I would print it out for me to see what it looked like so I could refer back to it. But you'll see that now is where I put the polish on it, and it looks more, this is what will end up being in the book. All right. So we're kind of going to be doing the same process, not maybe this exact same process, but just this idea of let's set everything up so that if we wanted to make a project, we could then do it. All right. And so, of course, we have to start at the beginning, and we have to think about, well, what kind of project do we want to do? I'm going to leave that up to you. I'll have some things to say about it, but, or not to say, I mean, obviously you can do whatever you want, but just try to steer you in a certain direction so it works within sort of what we're doing in these videos. But then we also need to think about, what do we want to make this project about? That's kind of the first thing. It's like, what is our idea? What do we want to do? And so I don't know if you're like me, but it's really helpful for me to have a jumping off point. Because when I'm given sort of like, Jonathan, you can do anything, it's almost like too much. There's too many choices. It's like when you're scrolling through Netflix and you can't find something to watch because there's so many choices. I like to have a prompt to jump off of. And so what I wanted to do, and so I don't want to say I've cheated, but this is probably going to be, this process is going to be a little bit longer than the 15 to 20 minutes that we have. So I'm going to walk you through it, but please feel free, just like you've said in previous videos, if you need to pause it and do your work and then start it up again, please do that. I don't want you to feel like you have to rush to get something done. I want us to really sort of like enjoy this process and this part of making art. So what I decided, I feel like we could always use, I wanted to think of something that's general, and that we can all use a little bit more of. And so I wrote down the prompt, happiness. So you can use this if you want, you don't have to, but I thought that this would be a good jumping off point. All right, because remember, we already did, I think 2 sessions ago. If you weren't here, that's okay. You could always go back and watch that video, but we did these get to know the artists, where we drew ourselves and we wrote down things that made us happy, things that we worry about. You could write down likes or dislikes. And so I thought this was nice because we've already kind of done it, and then it's everyone wants to be happy, right? So we could use that as a starting point. But what I wanted to do is, once you have happiness, I want you to get your paper your pencil, your pen. You can do it on loose paper if you want. If you have a notebook or a journal or a sketchbook that you keep, you can do it in there too. Like you see, this whole notebook is essentially where I just use this notebook to keep basically process work for my comics, and I do that. I have sketchbooks that's really all I do in my sketchbooks anymore, is just keep brainstorming and ideas. But you can do it on loose paper if you want. I don't want you to feel like there's one right way to do it, okay? Sometimes I like doing loose paper because then I can see it, I can lay it all out in front of me. Where in a sketchbook you have to flip back and forth, but it's up to you. But here's some questions to get you thinking. What makes you happy? If you want, you can look at get to know the artist. You just, again, what I would say is, as soon as you have an idea, write it down. There are no bad ideas. There are no good ideas. They're just going to be ideas, and then we'll pick sort of the ones that work the best from that pool later on. All right? What are big things that make you happy? Maybe a big thing is like going to Disneyland, or like your birthday or Christmas. And sometimes those are really easy to think about. But also think about, what are the little things that make you happy? What are the tiny things day to day that you enjoy? Like for me, I love falling asleep because I love dreaming. And so that's always really fun. Like I savor that. I love like going on bike rides or just being outside. And even when it's hot, like feeling and hearing the things around me. Like those are tiny little day-to-day things. So try to think about, what are your little day-to-day things that you like? What are the tiny things that make up your days that you like? All right. And then also think about things. It could be physical things. Like on my Get to Know the Artist, I wrote comics and chips. Those are both things that I like. It could be people. Who are the people that make you happy? Who are the people you admire? It could just be people in general. Maybe you miss people. Experiences. This kind of goes in what I was talking about before. It's like, sometimes it's not just things that make us happy. It's not just people that make us happy, but it's the things that we do that make us happy. And then also made me think of memories. Like what are some fun memories you had? That's a way to think about it too. So, I imagine all of you have probably brainstormed before. And if you haven't, hopefully you get a good idea about it, but it's really just like writing everything down. And then it could also be, remember, this is just a jumping off point. You don't have to do this happiness thing. Maybe you've had a rough time lately. Maybe it's been hard and you can't think about something that has made you happy lately. And so maybe you just think about how you've been kind of sad, and then write down the things that have made you, that you've been thinking about while you've been sad. You can do a project on that too. It's just, again, there's no right or wrong answer here. It really is just to get us thinking. All right. So I would just say to take some time and write down all of those things. And then what I want us to do is, on either another sheet or somewhere on that, maybe on the other side, I want us to think about, what kind of project do you want to make? All right. Let's look at all these ideas you have, and let's think about what's a way that you can sort of bring that to life in art. Okay. And so just for the sake of keeping it within the realm of what we're doing, I'm going to say drawing. I'm going to say keep it as a drawing. All right. But you can do it if you want to do a sculpture or something, or a painting, it's really up to you. But what kind of drawing? How do you see it? And again, write these ideas down. This is just another brainstorm. Is it going to be a portrait? Is it a portrait of someone? Is it a self-portrait? Is it just a drawing of your friends? Is it a landscape? Maybe you love the park. It makes you happy. It's really up to you. But once you have that idea, you can think about, well, how are you going to make it? Like, actually, how are you going to make it? What are the supplies you're going to use? Are you just going to keep it black and white? Are you going to do Sharpies? Are you going to have it in color? What tools do you have to color in? Have you used those tools before? Maybe you can practice a little before you do. But really just think about that. And that ties into, I wrote down what supplies. But then I would also say, do you need to do any research? and research in a fun way. I know sometimes research, like you have to do a research paper, it could be kind of boring or kind of stressful, but research just in terms of like, if you remember that third video, and if you weren't here for the third video, you can go back and watch it. Well, we drew bicycles, and we drew them from memory. And they kind of turned out wrong, but they also kind of turned out right. And we went and we looked up pictures of bicycles online afterwards to see what we did wrong, and then we could redraw them and fix them based off those drawings. So that's called photo reference in when you're making images, and like there's nothing wrong with that. So, but maybe what do you need to do any research? Maybe take the time to do that, or write down what the research you need to do. And then once you have that, I would actually say take the time and sketch it out. Figure out, what did the composition looks like, or compositions look like. Do you want to have it landscape? Do you want to have it portrait? Play around with where things are. All right. And so that kind of is like the foundation, or it's like the blueprint that you're going to use. You can use to create a final drawing. And so what I'm going to do is, because this is a little bit of a long process, and I wanted to be able to go over all this stuff. I just kind of did a really quick brainstorm on what I'm going to do or what I did for this. So at first I just copied down the things that I liked, and I crossed off things, and maybe I didn't want to do something about chips. I didn't want to do something about friends or family, because I had already done that for my last journal comic, and I didn't want to do something about biking. Anyhow, so you can see I'm just writing things down. I'm starring things that I kind of like, and I'll write additional notes. And then I just thought of some recent things that happened to me to kind of draw from. These are experiences. And then I wrote down journal comic, because I think as I thought about these things that I liked, and like, oh, what did I want to do? I was really drawn to doing not just a drawing, but telling a story. I love telling stories. And so I wrote down pressure washing, which I know seems like a weird thing, but basically a couple days ago, I bought a new pressure washer, and I was going to wash our patio off, and I was washing it, and the cement was getting clean, but it was also, there was so much dirt and stuff on it that the water was just kind of turning into muddy water. And the way our cement is, it wasn't going off into the grass, it was just kind of pooling. And it was really, really frustrating to me, because I was like, well, what's the point? This isn't going to work. Like, this is so frustrating. I was excited to do this thing, and it's not working how I want. And so honestly, I just kind of got upset, and I put everything away and went inside, and I think I read or played video games or something. But then I woke up the next morning, and I looked outside, and it wasn't like, it was cleaner. It was obviously cleaner, and the water had evaporated, and so there was some loose dirt, and I could go and I could sweep it off, and then it ended up being clean. And so it did actually work. And I really liked this experience. It really made me happy, because it reminded me, kind of like what we're doing now, that everything is a process, right? Sometimes you have to wait. You can't have that instant gratification. You have to remember that, like, things take time. And so I just thought this idea tied into everything that we've been doing. So what I wrote down is, I wrote down the bullet points of what happened, kind of like the story I just told you. And then I crossed out one that I was like, oh, it didn't work, because I like this very clean 4-panel setup. And you can see that I did quick sketches here of what I would want it to look like. And here on this last one, so I have me and the pressure washer, and then there's going to be caption, me actually pressure washing, but then there being all this mud water here, me getting angry and walking away. And then this last one was me the next day looking out at the clean patio. And so you see, I didn't like this one. I tried to do it again, and actually I ended up going back to this original drawing, but I ended up getting rid of the window, so I'm actually looking out at it. But you can see, that's real quick. It's not very pretty, but it gives me an idea of what's going to go where. All right. And then also, I just thought about, I love black and white. I love ink, but I also thought that I might add some color to it, because I want to show the like clean water, the dirty water, the clean cement, the dirty cement. I think that's going to be easier to do with like colored pencils or something. So I wrote down ink and colored pencils. All right. So this was just me doing the brainstorm. You can do it however you want. I would just think of trying to come up with as many ideas as you can. And you kind of have to feel them through, and like something will grab you or something will really stand out. And others you just do and you're like, well, at least that was out of the way, and I know that I don't want to do that. Okay. So again, this is something I want you to take your time on. So definitely feel free to either pause the video and work on it and then come back, or just like after this is done, just sit and work on it. And you have to watch the video again, please do. Again, it's just teaching us, like, this isn't a final product at all. It really is just us letting ourselves be creative and exploring ideas, which I think is really important. Okay. So I think that's it for today. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining us, whether you're new or a returning customer, like I said in the beginning. I really appreciate it, and I hope you're having a good time. And so next week, we're going to do a sort of, you can use this to do the next project, or you can kind of do something new, but they're kind of connected, and it's like, it's kind of like, this is the process of brainstorming, and the next is the process of making a finished piece. Okay, so all right, with that, I'll say goodbye, and I'll see you next week. Stay safe.